Jean-Jacques Zambrowski is a university professor, doctor, and health specialist, and he joins me now live from Paris for more on this. Jean-Jacques, thanks for taking the time to share your expertise with us. First of all, what do you think will come out of this meeting in Brussels today? Do you think the EU will be able to come up with some kind of coordinated response?
Well, I do hope so, because otherwise, since you can go from one European country to another one without any difficulty, it would be a real threat and a real problem if the European could not agree on a common policy against anyone coming from China, would it be a Chinese citizen or even a European citizen coming back to Europe, because that was impossible until the very last weeks. So I do hope that Europe will have a common voice, as they could agree on buying the vaccine from those companies which were manufacturing them a few months ago, a few years ago. Nevertheless, I mean, we can understand why the Chinese seem to complain and to scream, but this is politics, and this has nothing to do with public health. Public health is something we must be very careful about. And I do hope that Europeans will have a common voice.
Because at the moment, just to lay the land for everyone, the US, Spain, Canada, other countries here in Europe like France are demanding these negative COVID tests for Chinese travelers, but not every country is doing it, particularly in Europe, where you have countries like France, Spain, and Italy that are. Why are these isolated requests happening? And is there anything that they might do that could keep COVID from spreading, or does it need to be a communal European response, in your opinion?
It has to be a common European policy, but there's nothing to be astonished about in the fact that some countries find an appropriate answer earlier than others, because we didn't know that China was about to release and allow people to fly away from China until very recently. China was closed on itself, and it opened all of a sudden a couple of days ago. Few countries have been wise enough to take quick decision, and some others are still reluctant. And a third group, like Belgium, for example, says, we will decide to join the European if European can have a common European policy. Nobody wants to have agreement and to have problems with the Chinese authorities, but nobody wants to be invaded by China's strains and China's variants of the virus.
So what about a country like France that's already made moves against China, so to speak? Do you think that it could get to a point where it closes its borders completely to travelers from China, no matter their nationality, like a country like Morocco has?
No, you cannot. You cannot. I mean, we are on a small planet, and we need people from China to be able to visit Europe. And if they can enter a European country that would not take such legislation or regulation, they would, without any control, be able to travel to France. So either we take a common European decision of appropriate checking at the entrance in Europe, and it is not really something hurtful, it's not painful, it's not a discriminative attitude, it is just a kind of precaution. We don't want to be invaded by any new strain we would not know how to get rid of, and we are just willing everybody to travel freely. We want European people to travel freely to China, and we want Chinese visitors to come freely to anywhere in Europe. And this has to be a common European decision. Otherwise, since we have no borders between European countries, that will be nonsense, absolutely nonsense. So for the moment, a few countries have already taken the decision. You mentioned a few of them, and there are about 10 to 15 countries. We have to take the decision but as far as I know from our friends in Brussels, the discussion are about to get to that conclusion, that we need to have a polite but firm common European decision.
Let's talk a bit more about reaction from China. China's been very critical of these moves from these individual countries. What do you think about that reaction from China to all of this?
Well, it's easy to understand the Chinese policy, even for the Chinese people themselves. You know, they have prevented the Chinese from flying and from traveling, even from one city to another within China. And all of a sudden, they decided to, oh, it's enough, you can travel. But most of the Chinese people are not vaccinated. And those who are vaccinated with vaccines that do not work appropriately. Oh, well,
Jean,
okay, I cancelled the phone. No, I said we have to make sure that they understand the way we are going to decide a common policy, but we have to understand the way that they decided to restrict and to behave and to seem to be very angry against Europeans. It's also part of the what we heard about in Ukraine and China. This is politics. And unfortunately, whether you like it or not, health policies has nothing to do with politics.
Jean-Jacques, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us here on France 24. Jean-Jacques Zambrowski, university professor, doctor, and health specialist. Thank you very much.